Welcome to KBS World Radio. You're now tuned in to Korea24's Korea Book Club, where we explore the world of Korean literature. This is our weekend replay edition, playing back our book segment from Wednesday's show. We hope you enjoy it. I'm your host, Kwon Jang-woo. Joining me now in the studio, it is our literary critic, Barry Welsh, once again. Barry, hello, it's good to see you.
Yes, good to see you again.
Okay, so what do you have for us this week?
So this week we're reviewing a novel called Whale by Cheon Myeong-kwan, published last year by Europa Editions and translated into English by Ji-young Kim. The Korean title is Kore, and it was actually nominated for the International Booker Prize this year. It didn't win, unfortunately, but it's still very prestigious to be among the nominees. And Cheon is a very popular writer here in Korea, with a career spanning almost 2 decades now. He debuted in 2003 with a highly regarded and much-loved story called Frank and Me, which won the Munhak Dongne New Writer Award that same year. And in the following year, Cheon published his debut novel, which was today's novel, Whale. And at the time, it became something of a literary sensation. It was extremely highly praised. It became a bestseller, and it won the prestigious Munhak Dongne Novel Award in 2004, the year it was published. Since then, he's published several more novels and short story collections, including Modern Family, which was adapted into a movie, and Homecoming. But Whale, I think, is still his masterwork or his representative work. It's a deeply enjoyable work of literary fiction. It's been compared to Colombian author Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude, and that's a very apt description. Whale is a similarly magical, realist, at times fairy tale-like satire of modern Korean history, told through a multi-generational saga of 3 women and an abundance of supporting characters, and it spans a big chunk of Korean history in the 20th century.
Right, so as you said, this work, it made headlines this year after it was shortlisted for the International Booker Prize, so it has received international acclaim as well. And it was especially welcome to see the veteran translator, Kim Ji-young, nominated as well, being recognised for her work. She is a figure that we've talked about many times on this segment before as well. So, this work, you said it was a magical realist satire spanning a modern Korean history. Can you briefly sum up the plot for us and some of the central themes explored?
Right, so it's actually a very difficult novel to summarise because there's so much happening in it. But it primarily focuses on the story of Gumbok, who's a young woman who leaves her small rural village to seek her fortune in the big city. And Gumbok is a resourceful and ambitious woman, and she quickly rises through the ranks of society. She becomes a successful businesswoman and a landowner and a very influential person in her community. However, this success comes at a significant price. She's forced to make some very terrible sacrifices, personal sacrifices and professional sacrifices. And through her story, and then also later her daughter Chunhee's story, Whale explores a number of complex and often challenging themes, including gender roles, social class, and how the nature of power, how power operates in a society. And Gumbok herself is actually at times quite a challenging person or challenging character. She is, in some ways, she's a highly admirable person, but also extremely and at times unpleasantly flawed. But this just makes her a very engaging character. She's a strong, independent woman who refuses to be defined by traditional gender roles of the society around her. But at the same time, she's also ruthless and ambitious, and she's willing to do awful things to get ahead. And this includes betraying people around her, abusing her daughter, neglecting her daughter, and generally just stepping on or over anyone around her to climb her way up society. And in her story, we can also see this sort of exploration of the social and economic changes that South Korea was going through after the Korean War. If you know anything about Korean history, you'll recognize, you'll know what this novel is talking about. And Gumbok's rise to power, mirrors the rise of South Korea as a successful nation in the world. And the novel also highlights the dark side of that economic boom, the dark side of the miracle on the Han, and her success. Gumbok's success is often built on the exploitation of other people.
Right, I see. So you can see the parallels the story is making with Korea's own troubled history then. So we've talked about the fact that this work was celebrated when it was published initially in the mid-2000s. What do you think made it stand out? How does Whale compare to perhaps other works of modern Korean literature?
Right, yeah, so Whale is a genuinely unique and innovative novel. I think it really does stand out from other works of modern Korean literature. I haven't read anything that tackles Korean history quite the way that Cheon does here. I'm not sure what other Korean novel I would compare it to. It really does seem to stand alone. Cheon's writing is very bold and imaginative. He's blending elements of realism and fantasy and satire to create a story that's very entertaining, but it's also very thought-provoking. It also has an earthy body tone that's full of vulgarity that I found a joy to read, and a succession of wonderfully realised characters. So this novel is just packed full of characters. So, for example, there's a man who's referred to as the man with the scar. There's one of Gumbok's first lovers is this giant man called Kokjong, and many, many more characters. And they sort of come on and off the stage of the novel, at sort of relevant points, and it's really fantastic to see how they're developed. And one of the other things that sets Whale apart from other, Korean novels that we've reviewed on the show is this use of magical realism. So magical realism is a literary genre that combines elements of realism with elements of fantasy. So as in 100 Years of Solitude or, Salman Rushdie's most famous books. And in Whale, Cheon is using that sort of magical realism devices to create this sort of depiction of Korea that is both familiar and very strange. So, for example, we have all of these sort of magical things that happen. So, Chun-hee, Gumbok's daughter, communicates telepathically with a retired circus elephant. There's a woman who controls an army of bees. There's a magical curse that changes the fates of most of the main characters. And that all sounds very strange when I say it now, but the way it's sort of woven into the story is really very clever and interesting. And like I mentioned, the novel just features just an array of complex and well-developed characters, not just Gumbok and Chun-hee, just lots of the side characters and supporting characters, and lots of them will definitely stay with readers long after you finish reading this book.
Wow, so there are some surrealist elements as well in there. That's perhaps something readers should note when approaching this work, but as you said, that's perhaps what makes this work so unique and special. As I mentioned, it received the International Booker Prize shortlist. It received international acclaim for that. Do you think then it does translate well for an international audience? There are, as you said, elements of Korean history in there. What do you think it offers international readers?
Right, so absolutely, I think this is a book that is, very accessible to anybody, and people should read Whale because it's a very well written novel. It's a very thought provoking novel, and it offers a unique perspective on Korean culture and history. Like I said already, it's very entertaining. I thought it was full of humour, also full of suspense. A cast of genuinely memorable characters that just sort of pop out. It was, you feel very emotionally connected to some of the characters, especially Chun-hee. And there's this, a series of strange and gripping events, but it's very accessible and very readable. It is a challenging novel in some ways because it explores difficult themes, like we've said, so gender roles, social class, power, the abuse of power. Some of the political, the dictatorship is explored in the novel as well. But it does offer a unique perspective on Korean culture and history. But at the same time, it's rooted in the Korean experience. But I think as well, it is just something that's universally relatable. It's certainly a novel that will stay with you, long after you finish reading it. I think it certainly will with me. We should perhaps give a small word of caution, though. Some readers with maybe more delicate sensibilities might want to skip whale.
Right.
It is full of violence and sex and abuse and earthy language, and frequently discusses life in quite vulgar terms. If that's not for you, then maybe skip this one. It's not a novel that shies away from the unpleasant aspects of life, but instead embraces and accepts this as a part of life, and certainly a significant part of Korean life in the 20th century. It's also a novel that, in its way, offers readers a primer on Korean history in the 20th century. If you think of something like Min Jin Lee's Pachinko, that's doing the same kind of thing through a sort of a more realistic lens, whereas Whale is telling us a similar kind of story, but it's doing it through fable and fairy tale and magic. I thought it was a huge achievement, and it's absolutely a must-read for any fans of Korean literature.
Well, that is quite the endorsement indeed. Okay, we'll have to wrap it up there. That was Whale by Cheon Myeong-kwan, translated by Ji-young Kim. Barry, thank you for that recommendation, and we'll see you again next time.
Okay, take care.
And that's all for this week's Korea Book Club. You can check out more of the works we discussed on our website at world.kbs.co.kr. Join us again next week.
모란이 피기까지는 김영랑.
Until Peonies Bloom by Kim Yong-lang.
모란이 피기까지는 나는 아직 나의 봄을 기다리고 있을 테요. 모란이 뚝뚝 떨어져 버린 날, 나는 비로소 봄을 여인 서름에 잠길 테요.
Until peonies bloom, I'll just go on waiting for my spring. On days when peonies drop their petals, I'll finally languish in sorrow at the loss of spring.
5월 어느 날, 그 하루 무덥던 날, 떨어져 누운 꽃잎마저 시들어 버리고는 천지에 모라는 자취도 없어지고.
One day in May, that one sultry day, when the fallen petals had all withered away, there was no trace of peonies in all the world.
뻗쳐 오르던 내 보람 서운케 무너졌느니, 모란이 지고 말면 그뿐 내 한 해는 다 가고 마라.
My soaring sense of fulfillment had crumbled into sorrow. Once peonies have finished falling, my year is over. For all 360 days I sadly lament.
360날 한양 섭섭해 오옵니다. 모란이 피기까지는 나는 아직 기다리고 있을 테요. 찬란한 슬픔의 봄을.
Until peonies bloom, I'll just go on waiting for a spring of glorious sorrow.
You've listened to Korean poet Kim Young-ran's 모란이 피기까지는 Until Peonies Bloom, read by An Jae-woo and translated by brother Anthony of Tae's and Son Jae. KBS World Radio brings the beauty of Korean poetry to the world.